Hello. I thought I would check in before I head out in a minute. I'm going to the hairdressers. I stupidly thought I fancy some curtain bangs, curtain fringe, some face shaping layers, pieces, whatever. My hair was all one length and I watched a lot of tutorials on how to do it and thought, yep, if they can do it, so can I. No, I could not do it. I will, if I feel brave enough, I will insert a picture of what happened. It is a hack job. I've got professional, decent hair scissors that I use to trim my hair, but that's a trim, like teeny tiny trims. This was a full-on style. As you can see, I've got the little grips in to slick them down. And I needed to go to the hairdressers anyway in the end, so I might as well have just booked that in initially to save all this stress. But thankfully they can fit me in. So yeah, if like me you're thinking, it wasn't a 3 a.m. decision either, it was at a decent hour, but the thought process was still the same. But if like me you're thinking, I fancy a fringe, I'll do it myself, if you can do it, that's amazing. But if you're like me and you're not very good at that stuff, save the stress and go and book in with the hairdressers. But I'll check in with the after. Hopefully they can, they're professionals, they should be able to help. But I started here initially and I was like, no, I've seen a few people and they've got, shorter pieces and it looks really nice. So I obviously went shorter and they're probably about to here now. But it doesn't look even. There's something that doesn't look right with it, but I can't tell what it is, and I don't want to risk getting it shorter and messing it up even more. So I'm going to the hairdressers and hopefully they can sort me out. But I'm 33 this year and this is the kind of stuff I used to do in my teens and early 20s, and understandably my boyfriend is not very pleased with me because he's just like, you're still doing this kind of stuff? Haven't you learned by now? You think I would have. I think I'm going to write a strongly worded note to myself to say, future you, if you're thinking about giving yourself a fringe, don't do it because you know you can't. We have got back from hairdressers, which you can obviously tell. They've corrected my DIY fringe. To be fair, she said that I didn't do a bad job as such. I just needed to soften it, and there was one side that was particularly thicker than the other. But yeah, I think I do like it. She said that it just needs to grow out a tiny little bit more, I think, like the shorter pieces, just so it grazes the top of my cheekbone. It's just that thing, isn't it, when you see something on someone else, it never looks quite the same because different hair types and things like that. My hair is very frizzy, wavy. It does go curlier or wavier than this. If I just leave it be. So the same with the fringe pieces. I might try, when I wash my hair next, just leave it to naturally curl, because these are shorter now. They'll definitely go curly and see how that will look as well. Just play around with it. But yeah, it wasn't as embarrassing as I thought it would be because I obviously see it all the time. And really quick in and out job. So yeah. I thought I'll do a quick book update on the floor by my bookcase. I find it really comfy sitting on the floor, especially in this corner, because there is a fluffy rug that I'm sitting on, and I normally like to journal here and speak about books, I suppose. But I did finish The Princess Knights, which I mentioned in my last video. I have thoughts on it. I originally did enjoy it, and overall I think I did enjoy it. However, there was pockets within the book that I got bored with, and while I liked some of the characters, or quite a lot of the characters, I also wanted more depth with them, I suppose. But maybe that's not the right book for it. Maybe the book done its job and everything was wrapped up quite nicely in the end, which I do like. It depends on the circumstances, but I do most of the time like it when a book wraps everything up and you're not left wondering what's going on, and the author leaves it up to you to decide, because I like to know for definite. I get it adds to the story and the slow burn and the drama, but I find it really frustrating, more so recently, maybe the past year, last year and this year. I just get quite irritated when characters don't communicate very well, or within The Princess Knight, I suppose I kind of noticed it and was more aware of it frustrating me, is when it's mainly between like two love interests I find within books. And within The Princess Knight, within the two love interests, one of them jumps to a conclusion really quickly, and without talking to the other love interest who's standing like they're in the same room, they just making a conclusion, jump into their own thoughts about what they think the other person means, and then they end up in like some weird, maybe argument or like tense feeling for a long time. And I understand it does have a place sometimes, but because it was over something so tiny, and I found that with previous books I've read, some of the arguments are over something so trivial, and I guess that is real life, I suppose, because you do argue about things that can be trivial. But when it makes two characters not speak to each other, or they don't get together as quickly as they could have, I just find it really juvenile and frustrating. And then they quickly get together and it all is forgiven so quickly. And I think juvenile is the right word that I'm looking for. But anyway, I did enjoy The Princess Knight, but I did find some scenes and characters frustrating, and it made me not enjoy the book as much as I could have, I suppose. And I thought it was mainly just me, because all of the reviews and thoughts I've seen online, like Bookstagram and things like that, have been really positive. But then when I looked on Goodreads afterwards, because I don't like to look at reviews before I read a book, because I don't want to take on other people's thoughts, especially if they're negative as well, because then I just want to make up my own conclusion of a book without having external input. Anyway, after I read the book, I went on to Goodreads and I filtered down to like the mid to low starred reviews, and a lot of people felt similar. Anyway, I finished The Princess Knight. I'm now reading Impractical Magic, and I can't remember, I think it's Laurie Gilmore, the author. I will put the name up on the screen. I'm listening to that, and I'm only about a quarter way in, and that's cozy. I kind of wanted a cozy book to read. It's about witches, and the main character has come back home, and she's been away from home for 10 years, but she's come back, and the town and her family, she's got a mother and 2 sisters so far. That's the characters that I've been introduced to in her family. They are all witches, but their magic isn't working. There's something going on. The magic isn't right. When they perform a spell, it goes wrong. And the 10 years that she's been away from home, she's been living in San Francisco, I believe, and she's not used magic within those 10 years, but now she's back, and of course there is a love interest that she left behind, so we shall see where that goes, but I'm enjoying it so far. And I think one of the books that I would like to read, a book that I would like to read this month, is Little Big by John Crowley, and I've downloaded it on my Kindle. I came across this book because I recently read the Gormenghast trilogy and I enjoyed it so much. It's something that I've not read before. I've not read anything similar. It was so strange and magical without there being an obvious magic. The characters were bizarre but interesting. It was very theatrical, and I believe the author of the Gormenghast series was an artist as well, so I've heard that go around, and that's why his writing is very artistic and theatrical in ways, and it was just very interesting. I read it very quickly. Anyway, I googled and I looked on Goodreads similar books that have the same vibes as Gormenghast, and Little Big was suggested. So I've looked up the book info of Little Big and not much has been said. It's very vague, which is similar to Gormenghast, so I think it's one of those books that you have to read to really just understand it maybe. The book info of Little Big is Smokey Barnable lives in the city and he's travelling to a town that's not on any maps and seems to be in the middle of nowhere to marry Daily Alice Drinkwater. I believe that's the correct name. And they have been prophesied that they will marry, so he travels to her location, and in the book description it says it's generations, a family of generations in one house, but within the house there's more houses in some kind of magical sense. There's something going on there. So not much is given away, as you can kind of tell, because I'm not really speaking about anything as such, but that is the book description that Goodreads has presented to me, and it sounds really interesting, and if it's anything like the Gormenghast series, then I think it will be really enjoyable. That's the current book situation at the moment. I am a very big mood reader, so even though I do have a rough plan of books I would like to read in January, next month, and so on, 9 times out of 10 I end up reading something completely different anyway. But yes, I'm really enjoying Practical Magic. The Princess Knight wasn't as good as I thought it would be, but overall I still enjoyed it, and Little Big is a potential read for this month. So if you are a book reader as well, let me know what you're reading. If you've read any of the books that I've just mentioned, let me know your thoughts, and any recommendations are always welcome.